As one could expect, over the last day and a bit, I've been trying to figure out the best possible ways to utilize the God cards, given the fact that this whole 25th celebration is all centered around the God cards, right? We don't have any new support or anything like that, but we do have alternate arts, we have some steles, sort of creations, accessories, things like that, and that's all well and good. However, trying to find the best deck and optimal ways of playing these God cards has unironically left me a little bit burnt out on the gods. So whenever I wanted to take a break from them to play something else, I came to my classic, and that is Swordsoul, the first ever deck I made a video on, and it's still just as good to this day, which is insane. I expected this deck to kind of flop. I was in Master 1, so I wasn't expecting to maintain a super high win rate, but this deck was absolutely crushing it. Swordsoul is as good now as it's been. It is actually incredible. Swordsoul performed spectacularly. Pure Swordsoul as well. Just the list you're seeing before you. Absolute blast. So we're going to be going over some of the replays, some of the more interesting games from that small claim that we did, a little win streak. Again, this is all in Master 1. I will be showing off the deck that I got to Master 1 with in the next video, which is a Vanquish Soul list. But this is just one that I've been playing since. Hell of a lot of fun, super powerful. If you're interested in seeing decks like this or content like this in the future, of course you can subscribe. I'm going to be going through the deck at the end of the video as sort of like a card for card profile, because some newer people to the channel or newer people to Master Duel might not even be fully aware of what Swordsoul is, because it has since fallen out of grace and it's not necessarily in the public eye. It's still very popular on the ranked ladder, don't get me wrong, but it's not as much in the eye or focus of the community at the moment. So I am going to cover the deck off in a little bit more detail later on in the video. Stay tuned for that. Watch the gameplay if you're unfamiliar with the deck, or even if you are familiar, just watch the gameplay. Why wouldn't you, right? It's part of the reason you clicked on the video. So enjoy the gameplay, like the video. Let's just get into it. Alright, let's get a snippet of the deck in action against the up-and-coming bowl of the meta, that being Vanquish Soul. Going for Terra in the Rock of the Vanquisher. They're going to go Rock of the Vanquisher. Now, you're seeing Duel in my list here. I ended up removing Duel. It was very, very mid. It's actually because of Vanquish Soul. Because Duel is rather ineffectual against this deck for the most part. It can be very, very weak against Vanquish Soul. You might stop one search, right? Really not that impactful most of the time. So I don't even really believe we use it this game. I might be wrong there. They're going to reveal some cards, do some burn. Yeah, we don't even use it. Getting into our turn, we top deck in the Worm Monster, which is exactly what we needed. So we're going to special summon out the Ecclesia. Of course, Ecclesia can special summon itself to the field if your opponent controls more monsters than you. They're then going to start using their effects. We're going to preemptively tribute off their Borger for our Curacara. Now, that was and wasn't a good thing, because it does put us a little bit... It means that our Imperm isn't as useful, but it's fine. He's just adding a card back to hand. We're going to go Ecclesia here, tributing itself to summon out a Mo Yi from deck. Mo Yi revealing Shifana to summon out a token. Going into the Shizao. Again, really standard lane 1 plays here off of Swordsoul. Going for Nibiru though. Nibiru going to tribute the whole field, summoning to their side of the field the Nibiru, and to our side of the field a token. That definitely hurts, but it does not leave us without players. We're going to grab Strategist. I make some questionable decisions here. You would have had one of two decisions. You could have either just discarded the Shifana for the Strategist, summon the Strategist as a token, go into a level 10 synchro. Fair enough, nice and easy, that could work. I decided I was going to be a little bit different, and I went into Boxia using our second Ecclesia, sending the Nibiru back into the deck. We're going to pop the token to summon Shifana, Shifana linking off into Monk of the Tenyi, and then we're going to swing directly here for 3300. Is this better than the other play? Probably not, but again, I was getting back into the swing of the deck. You can see I wasn't even using any background accessories yet. But it ends up working out, which is interesting here. They're going to go for Terra, returning Terra back to hand, summoning out the Borger. Now, Borger going to inflict even more burn damage. He's looking to bring us down nice and low, ready to be exploited. Going to swing into our Monk as well, taking out the Monk, but he did not reach Shifana. Nobody fucking does. Banishing Shifana allows us to resummon the Monk and pop a card on the field, getting rid of the Borger. Now, that puts Vanquish Soul at a massive disadvantage, because they're going to go into Rock to try and recover some of their lost advantage, but that's why we've got Imperm, to stop the Rock. That is a huge choke point when it comes to Vanquish Soul. If you can manage to whittle down their resources and prevent their recovery, they really, really struggle to keep pace. Getting back in the hour turn, top decking into Ecclesia, which is awesome. We're going to go boxy here, popping the Monk to resummon the Mo Yi from the graveyard, which is an excellent little combo I love doing. Summon the Mo Yi, revealing the Strategist. They're going to go for Rocket the Vanquisher to add a Vanquish Soul from graveyard back to hand. Based upon the set card, I'm assuming because they've added that back, this set card must be pretty important when they're waiting until we go into like Shizao and things to use it. So I decide instead, we're going to go in to Dragate. Dragate having a spell or trap negate built into itself. We get to draw one off the Mo Yi, but our opponent, whatever that back row was, that was his win condition. And because we stripped that from him, he didn't want to continue. So there you go. That is Swordsoul playing into the big bad of the upcoming meta. Now, was it a perfect matchup on either side? Probably not. You could criticize players on both ends. However, I still thought it was an interesting enough game to show off. Let's get into game 2. And now we are appropriately dripped out and dressed up in the brand new Slifer field. This field, by the way, I know I haven't made a video on it yet. This field is absolutely stunning. Beautiful work here from the team at Master Duel. Excellent, excellent field. Perfect. We're going to summon out the Taya then, banishing the shooter from the graveyard, summoning out a token, going to synchro summon into the Shizao. Shizao then going to activate its effect, get Searching. Taya will get Milling. They're going to go for an Ash Blossom in response to the Taya, which is normally a bad play, but it did genuinely disrupt us here, so fair enough. This is still putting us in a position where we can do our whole like ideal turn 1 combo. Dropping a Dara to summon out the Strategist plus its token. Going to use these two to go into the Sinister Sovereign. This can be any of your level 10s. Most of the time you probably want to go Baron. I just wanted to summon this guy for a change of pace, and again it ended up working out. This is a very, very powerful monster that I don't think gets nearly enough respect. The big reason as to why I would normally prefer Baron is so that I can play around board breakers a little bit easier, where this guy might struggle. But if your opponent's not playing major board breakers, this guy's way better than Baron because of that multiple, not only the multiple removal effects, as well as the fact that they're being banished, not sent to graveyard, and the fact that you're inflicting all of this burn damage. It just culminates into something that it just adds up to more than what Baron does, in my opinion, again. Of course, it struggles against board breakers. That's the big difference between the two. And that's why Baron's normally better. We're going to go Emergent, search Protoss, summon Protoss called Dark. That means Dark monsters are illegal until the end of the next turn. But it looks like our opponent is also playing Swordsoul. So we're going to hold off on our banish here. They're going to go Monk of the Tenyi. Similar plays to us. Normal summon Mo Yi. Mo Yi reveal. That's when we're going to go for the Grandmaster. Of course, that is the biggest choke point of the deck. You definitely want to hit their normal summon to get that shit right out the bat. And this is your turn 1 ideal situation for Swordsoul. We're going to go Sinister Sovereign on the summon of the Shaman, get rid of that shit, and just like that, bang, scooped, done. I needed to show off the optimal end board at least once, so that when I talk about it later in the deck profile, you actually know what I'm talking about. But that is your optimal turn 1. Basically what you're doing is you're turning off an attribute. Now that attribute has to be on the field, and any monster on the field of that attribute gets destroyed. So normally what you're going to do is call Dark, so you don't destroy any of your own shit. And Dark does encompass a large portion of the successful decks in the metagame. It hurts Pearly. They're not able to summon out their Noir or their Pearly Lee. It hurts, of course, Dragon Link. It hurts Vanquish Soul to an extent. They can't summon their Burger. They can't summon the Rock of the Vanquisher, things like that. So it does have an impact, for sure, on the game right now, more so than it did back when Cash Dura was pretty dominant. When Cash Dura was dominant, Protoss did kind of fall off a little bit because, well, it wasn't very good against Cash Dura. Now that the game has expanded out and more decks are good and different decks are good, Protoss is good again, and because Protoss is good again, Swordsoul is good again. It's that simple. But anyways, let's get into match number 3 on the topic of Cash Dura. I often view the relationship of Swordsoul and Cash Dura to be one of sort of like almost rivalry, if that makes sense. So we're going to go for some standard... Well, sorry, this isn't the standard play. This was us attempting to play around not having like a regular normal summon. Normally what you would do here is if you Shifana, you summon a Shifana, use it and the Strategist token to win the Grandmaster. Grandmaster then banishes Blackout from your deck. as part of its effect, and then this summons out another token for you to use for your second synchro summon. Now unfortunately, our opponent in this occasion had Imperm, which is one of the biggest obstacles to Swordsoul, which is huge, right? He just entirely shut down our whole turn here. We are, however, going to go for the Sacred Summit, bringing out Shafana then linking off into Monk of the Tenyi. This, in my opinion, this in my head was just a little bit of additional protection, because if he destroys this, we get to pop a card and bring it back, and just keeps us in the game longer. He is, however, going to special summon out the Cash Dura Unicorn. I think that's as good an opportunity to Imperm as any, but he's got Red Reboot, because of course he does. Why wouldn't he? Unicorn, Imperm, and Red Reboot, you love to see it. We're going to set Blackout from deck. We're going to see if that actually ends up mattering. We're going to add Cash Dura Birth from deck to hand. Cash Dura Theosis then coming out, targeting the Unicorn, summoning Fenrir from deck. Fenrir then activating its effect to search the deck for a Cash Dura monster. We're going to go for the Grandmaster's effect to negate that effect. You're not searching, and you're certainly not banishing for the rest of this turn, good sir, but the Unicorn unfortunately will be able to banish, getting rid of a card from our extra deck. Then they're going to go for Tactics to draw 2 additional cards before Exceed summoning into the Mecha Phantom Beast Drekazak. Into the battle phase, taking out the Strategist, of course, in the main phase 2. Using this now to go into Zeus, and this is where life gets very, very awkward for us, because Zeus wipes the board clean. And unfortunately, unless you top deck exactly Taya, Swordsoul don't have really much in the way of plays. We were, of course, at this time also playing Small World, another small adjustment that we later made. But yeah, there's very, very little Swordsoul could do to come back from a situation like that, other than top deck literally Taya and exclusively. But Fenrir still deals with that, and you still end up losing anyway. So yeah, it was a done deal. Finished game. It is what it is. Let's talk about the deck. Alright, now here is the deck list. Now, we're going to go over it relatively quickly. It is one we've covered in detail in the past. I'll be putting a link in the end page to a more detailed guide towards the end. But again, this should be more than enough for even newcomers to the deck to sort of fully understand. How the deck typically functions is based around your 3 main Swordsoul monsters. That's your Moyi, your Taya, and your Long Wan, right? All 3 of these monsters summon out as part of their effects a Swordsoul token. The Swordsoul token is a level 4 tuner. That's pretty much it. It's that simple. The rest of the deck is built in a fashion that allows you to activate those effects consistently, as well as having a shitload of hand traps. That's it. That's the deck. So let's remove the hand traps first of all, just so we can get a decent look at what it is we're actually dealing with. So we got the double Veiler in there because we've got room. Triple Maxi because it's the best card in the game. Ash Blossom to counter the best card in the game. Same for double Call By and the singular Crossout. And then we still have room as well for double Infinite Impermanence, a triple Tactics talent, and a Nibiru. So those are the flex spots. Other cards you could technically consider flex spots would be adjusting your ratios for your Tenyi monsters, as well as Sacred Summit. I think this card is actually really underrated in Swordsoul. I know lots of people don't play it, and I know why, I get it. But I do think that having this in your deck, even just as a one-of, opens up a lot more combos than what you would anticipate, and it makes having like a Taya normal summon and things like that significantly more powerful. So I do like Summit as a one-of, but you don't have to play it. It's just Monster Reborn, for anyone who doesn't know. But yeah, this is the deck. Now, what exactly is it? It's your 3 main Swordsouls, Ecclesia, which helps you summon them, and a bunch of Tenyi monsters, which helps you meet the activation conditions of your Swordsouls. Let's talk about those first of all. You've got Moyi. Moyi on summon will reveal a Swordsoul card or a Worm monster in hand to summon her token. That's why we're playing so many Worm monsters. Like that, a mandatory 3 of. Taya you could play 2 or 3 of. I was testing out 3 because I really like her as a follow-up play. 2 is fine though, if you want more room, absolutely. Taya will, instead, as an ignition effect, you can activate her effect to banish a Swordsoul card or a Worm monster from grave to summon your token. Very good. And then lastly, you have the Strategist, who is a little bit different than how he works. He activates in hand, and you will discard a Swordsoul card or a Worm monster to special summon both this and a token at once. So all of them summon the token as part of their effects. The token is always a tuner, and you're basically meant to just use your Swordsoul monster, which is a non-tuner, and your token, being a tuner, to synchro summon. It's that easy. It's really straightforward. This is a deck that I recommend to all beginners to Master Duel because it's very powerful. very straightforward, relatively affordable, and super easy. Now, they all also have bonus effects that you activate whenever they're used as synchro material. Moyi lets you draw a card, Taya lets you send from deck to graveyard a worm monster, and the strategist will deal 1200 points of damage. Nice little bonus effects. You then have Incredible Ecclesia, who I'm going to lump in with the Swordsoul cards. Basically, she's a level 4 tuner who can special summon herself directly to the field from the hand as long as your opponent controls more monsters than you. And it can quick play tribute itself to special summon a Swordsoul monster directly from the deck, giving you quick and easy access to a Moyi if you have something in hand to reveal, or a Taya if you don't have something in hand to reveal and instead want to banish something from grave instead. So the amount of flexibility that Ecclesia offers you is immense. I would say definitely play this at 3. And that's the Swordsoul monsters. We then have Swordsoul Emergence, a searching spell card that lets you grab any Swordsoul monster from deck to hand, or if you control a synchro monster, you can instead grab any worm monster, which is unironically what you use it for more often. Usually you're going to have a synchro monster on board and you're going to be using Swordsoul Emergence to search your deck for something like Arch Nemesis Protoss, which we will get to in a minute. Secret Summit, like I said earlier on, is just Monster Reborn for the deck. It's searchable, you don't have to play it, many people don't. I think it's really good, personally, but again, it is what it is. And lastly, Blackout. Blackout is has two effects, twofold in its utility. Number one, and you can activate it to pop a worm you control and 2 cards your opponent controls. Basically just 2 points of spot removal, which is nice. It can also then, when this card ends up getting banished, you could special summon a Swordsoul token, which is very important, and you can banish this card very easily, either directly off of a Taya, or perhaps from a Grandmaster, which we will get to in a moment. But that's all the Swordsoul cards, so what are these other worm monsters in the deck then? Well, most of these are Tenyi monsters. Tenyi monsters are monsters that can special summon themselves from the hand so long as you don't control any effect monsters, and they also have a bonus effect that they can use by banishing themselves from hand or graveyard so long as you control a non-effect monster, like a Swordsoul token or Monk of the Tenyi. Adara, being a level 1 tuner, is unique in that it's the only tuner in the group, and its level is also very useful at level 1. Its banishment effect allows you to add another banished worm monster from the banish pile back to hand. Nice recycling. You have Vishuda, whose banishment effect allows you to send a card your opponent controls back to the hand, and Ashuna's banishment effect allows you to special summon a worm monster, or a Tenyi monster, sorry, directly from deck, but it does worm lock you. So, special summon, bounce a card, recycle a card. Shifana is the exception. If you watch the gameplay, you'll know what this card does. Basically, instead of having a proactive effect that you can use to generate advantage, instead, if a non-effect monster on your field is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, this card will activate, banishing itself to re-summon that monster, and then you get the option to pop a card your opponent controls as well. So it's pretty good protection because not very many people pay attention to the fact that this is in the graveyard or on the field or whatever, and they often fall prey to a quick little session of spot removal. It is very handy. And our last monster is Arch Nemesis Protoss, one of the main things that makes the deck good. Searchable thanks to Swordsoul Emergence. This card basically can be special summoned by banishing 3 monsters from your field or graveyard with 3 different attributes, and what you can do is once per turn, you can call an attribute of a monster that's currently on the field. Every monster on the field of that attribute is destroyed, and neither player can special summon monsters of that attribute until the end of the following turn. It is essentially a floodgate locking you out of an attribute. Now, most of the time, this card cannot be destroyed by card effects, so most of the time what you're going to do is declare Dark, because you don't usually have any Dark monsters on your end board, meaning you're not going to destroy any of your own cards. And calling Dark is accessible thanks to its own attribute, and is very, very effective in terms of being a generic blind call, right? If you were to call any attribute blind, it would be Dark. So very, very useful, being able to shut down a solid portion of the tier list, even calling blind, which is nice. Alternatively, of course, if you're going second, you can declare the attribute of a monster that they have in their field, or you could even, if you have an idea that you know what you're going up against, you could go out of your way to summon a monster of the attribute you want to prevent them summoning, and call that attribute. So there are ways to play around with its effect, but normally you're just going to call Dark, and normally calling Dark is going to win you a lot of games. That's the entire main deck. It really isn't that tough to handle. A little bit of practice. Basically, it's just normal summon Moyi Prophet. That's the entire deck. Getting into the extra deck, most of these are just flex sort of tech options. So the extra deck is very, very open and free to be customized. We have Yazi, who's a very useful card. Basically, this card can destroy himself as well as another card your opponent controls. And if this card ever does get destroyed, you can special summon any worm from your deck in defense. Very useful alongside Swordsoul of Taya in particular. We have Boxia, which on summon will return cards your opponent controls back to the deck, equal to the number of different attributes of worm monsters used for its summon. Normally, that's either going to be 1 or 2. 1 if you use Moyi, or 2 if you use Taya, since the Swordsoul token is a water attribute monster, and Taya is wind, of course. So wind and water, that's 2 spins. Very straightforward. It also has the ability to pop any card you control to bring back a level 4 lower monster from the grave. Draco Berserker of the Tenyi is a big old beat stick for the deck. If it destroys an effect monster by battle, it can attack again and permanently gains the attack points of the destroyed monster. It, of course, can only do each of those once per turn. So he's really, really good at breaking boards and going for lethal damage. He does also, however, have an active disruption, where if your opponent activates a monster effect, you can banish that monster. Pretty straightforward stuff. Dragite is a spell trap. All of that, ignore it. It's a spell trap negate. That's all it says. Shizao. Shizao is the one that we double up on because it's very, very important for the deck. Number 1, on summon, you get to search your deck for a Swordsoul card and either add it to your hand, banish it from the deck, or bite your tongue, whichever suits you best. So usually what you're going to do is, of course, search your deck for a card. In a pinch, you can also banish Blackout from your deck in order to summon directly to the field a Swordsoul token, which is occasionally a useful effect. Not very often, but it is definitely worth bearing in mind. It also has another effect where you can banish a Swordsoul card or a worm monster from your hand or graveyard to negate the effects of a face-up monster on the field until the end of the turn. So not only is he searching your deck for cards, he's also negating opponent's monsters, making him absolutely essential to the function of the deck. Xiaofang is very mid right now. If you do not have this card, do not craft it. It is not worth it right now. Basically, what it does is it prevents your opponent from activating the effects of monsters whose attributes match the attributes of Yang Xing monsters used for this card summon, which is almost always just going to be light. And the only deck that's really going to hurt is like Math Mech. Maybe. I just didn't put too much thought into what else could take this card's place. But, I mean, it's decent. It's okay. If you have it, you can play it. But I wouldn't... If you don't have it, don't lose sleep over it. You're not missing anything. I haven't summoned this card in, like, a year. We have our rank 10s then. Our level 10s, sorry, I should say. Baron de Fleur. Pretty generic stuff. We got Cheng Ying in its home archetype for a change. Instead of just being a splashable level 10 synchro monster, of course, with all its traditional effects. And then, lastly, the one that maybe you don't know about is the Sinister Sovereign. This guy basically has double disruptions built into its effect. First and foremost, if you synchro summon another worm monster while he's on the field, you get to draw a card, which is nice. Secondary to that, if your opponent special summons a monster, or if they activate a spell or a trap card, you get to banish that card, and you get to inflict 1200 points of damage to your opponent. And you can do both of those once per turn each, so 1 monster and 1 spell or trap. So double disruption plus some draw power. 2900 attack also makes him pretty big. So, I mean, that burn damage can mount up very fast. Like, that's 2400 from one turn here, 1200 there. So by the time your opponent hits, it's turn 2, and your opponent's already taken 3600 points of damage. It adds up very quickly. We have Psychic Gem Punisher and Geomath Mech Final Sigma are here exclusively for the utility of their levels. Sometimes you just have these awkward levels on board, and these are two fairly powerful monsters that will win you certain games and get you out of certain sticky situations that will take advantage of poor leveling situations, right? So if you have like a Boxia and a Ecclesia in the field, well, now you've got a Final Sigma. If you have a Vishuda and a Swordsoul token because your Moyi got Ghost Ogred, okay, well, now you've got Psychic Gem Punisher. So that's the idea. Monk of the Tenyi, playing it at 2, purely so that you can make the effects of your Tenyi monsters live more often. And lastly, we have Shaman, which is a very cool combo piece. Basically, you can discard a card to bring back a worm from the graveyard, and it doesn't target, meaning you can resummon the card that you discard, which is a very common application of it. A lot of people like to discard Taya, then summon Taya and use its effect, which is absolutely valid. It does, however, prevent you from using the effects of non-Tenyi extra deck monsters for the rest of the turn. And one last little bit that some people actually often forget about is that when an attack is declared involving a non-effect monster that you control, you get to pop a card your opponent controls. Pretty good. And that's the whole deck. It's that simple. Wrapped up in 13 minutes. Swordsoul really is not that complicated. If you're new to the game, if you're new to the deck, or you just want to try something new, this is definitely a direction to go in. It's very straightforward. It's very modular. You can improve upon it, build upon it, change it, do lots of different things, play whatever hand traps you have access to. If you don't have all the maxis, all the ash balls installed or whatever, you can very easily just slot in anything that you do have without worrying too much about it clashing. Yeah, generally speaking, fantastic deck. I'd recommend giving it a try. If you got this far into the video, make sure you're subscribed, because obviously you enjoyed something if you got this far into it. Like the video if you actually enjoyed watching it, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.